How many times have you recorded a solid podcast and ended up with recording that had this in the background?
Or maybe your voice sounded a bit like this.
That's where editing comes into play. But with so many different software packages out there, which one is going to be right for you that's not going to break the bank? Well, let's take a look at the top 4 editing applications for under $100 that I love. Hey there, I'm Brian Kind. I'm a 6-year podcast veteran and the video designer with Libsyn, and this channel is all about helping you stay up to date with the tips, tricks, and strategies to help grow your podcast and influence within the space. If you want to stay up to date with everything going on here at Libsyn, one of the largest podcast hosts and distribution platforms since 2004, do me a favor, hit that subscribe and follow button so you never miss a video. So let's present you with a scenario. You've got a nice new microphone, you've got some sweet studio headphones, and you've researched your episode content. You record what you think is a killer podcast, and just as you're about to pack it in and send it off to the world, you take a listen and you hear this. Welcome to the Cinema Psycho Show, the madhouse for film freaks and film fans. Oh, I'm gonna have to edit that. It didn't sound good. It'd be a shame if I left this in the edit here. This week on episode 238 of the Cinema Psycho Show, we have an amazing interview with... It'd be a shame if there happened to be a sound that had gotten rid of my voice just now. Terrible, right? We always hear about how great audio quality is one of the drivers of new listeners to your podcast. But the fact of the matter is, equipment alone is not going to be the be-all, end-all to create great sounding audio. That is where your ability to shape and trim your audio into your finished podcast becomes important. But with so many different software packages out there, which one is going to be right for you if you're on a tight budget? So let's break down the top 4 options you have in selecting an audio editing application. First off, when looking for audio editing software, you are actually looking for something referred to as a DAW, or Digital Audio Workstation software. These software packages allow you to mix and combine different audio elements together and process them into a final mixed podcast. In testing each of these software packages, I took it through the typical edit for me, which includes the following: splitting stereo audio to mono, noise reduction, shaping the voice with EQ and dynamics, unifying loudness, and removing random background noises. With that little bit of information out of the way, let's take a look at our free options. Should be no surprise here, but costing you the least amount of money, we have the combined free options of Audacity and Garageband. Now, some of the benefits of Audacity is that since version 3.1, editing with this particular application has become much easier as it now includes non-destructive editing. The nice thing too about Audacity is that it includes spectral editing. If you've never heard of spectral editing before, basically it allows you to view your audio on the spectral display and clearly identify and remove noises, just random noises. It could be anything like a smoke alarm beeping, or maybe there is a sound outside of your recording location. It's a really handy tool, and the fact that it's included in a free program is just crazy. And of course, there are tons of support online when getting started with this application. I saw numerous videos on places like YouTube that'll help you get started with this interface. So what are some of the negatives with Audacity? One of the biggest issues for me with Audacity is the fact that this program lacks real-time playback of effects. It is a major time suck. If you're spending a lot of time editing and then you have to also devote a bunch of time to waiting for the effect to preview, it's not going to go well in terms of speed with getting your podcast out there. I also felt that the graphic equalizer, although definitely good enough in a free program, was fairly clunky when compared to other parametric EQs that you might find in other softwares. It's not a deal breaker, but it's definitely something to be aware of if you're looking at this DAW. So with Audacity out of the way, let's take a look at our other free option, GarageBand. So the biggest benefit here is that GarageBand is 100% free and already comes loaded up with any Apple product. So what that means is that if you already have an Apple device like this, you already have GarageBand. This particular DAW comes loaded up with tons of loops. If you've never heard of loops, those are basically little sound samples. Now, for podcasters, this means that you could use these sound samples within your actual productions. I would note, though, that whenever you are using music that you did not create, you always want to be mindful of copyright. So I would definitely check on these loops before you go ahead and use them in your intros and your outros and background music, because the last thing you want to have is your podcast get dinged for copyright infringement. So what are the big negatives with GarageBand? Well, if you happen to be on a PC, I'm sorry, you're out of luck. You can't use GarageBand. In terms of process, I found that the lack of ability in doing simple things like splitting stereo audio tracks to mono was a big deal for me. I had to actually do some weird panning magic to be able to get my audio tracks to give me mono on one side and mono on the other. Another ding on this program is the fact that it lacks robust noise reduction, which is kind of crazy. Unless you're recording in a massive studio where you've got sound insulation all around you, I guarantee you that you're going to need noise reduction when you're working on your podcast. And the fact that there really isn't a solid noise reduction effect is a definite issue with this program. Now, they do have what they refer to as a noise gate, and while that is definitely okay, it's not a replacement for a solid noise reduction effect. Ultimately, this program was not designed for podcasters in mind. This is a program that is more or less designed for musicians. This is not designed for people like us who are just doing podcasts. And it makes sense, and that's okay. But ultimately, trying to make a program like GarageBand work for podcasting is kind of like trying to fit a square peg into a round hole. You can do it, and it's definitely possible, but honestly, since podcasting has grown, there are multiple programs out there that actually do a much better job and really do cater to podcasters. And with our free options out of the way, let's move on to our number 3 pick. Coming in at number 3 is Reaper by Kakos Inc. Reaper clocks in at $60, and that's a one-time purchase price, and that actually includes support and updates, which is great for $60. Now, Reaper is a great program and definitely has a bit of a learning curve, but the great thing is that there are a ton of tutorials online to get you started. Plus, there is a forum on their website. Now, it's worth mentioning that this particular program can do a lot. It can handle film sound. It can handle audio engineering. It can handle podcasting. It can handle music production. Reaper is a powerhouse of a DAW. So let's take a look at some of the different features of Reaper. So Reaper features a nice set of pro-level plugins that come right out of the box. For me, the Reefer plugin can handle a ton of processes. Things like noise reduction, EQ, and compression can all be handled with a great deal of manual control. Now, like Audacity, Reaper features spectral editing, which is great for removing some of those random sounds that I was talking about. Things like car alarms. The spectral editing tool can handle that easily. And the other great thing, there are an unlimited number of EQ bands in the Reaper plugin. Now, what are some of the negatives with Reaper? Well, as I mentioned, this particular program is dense. There is a massive learning curve when using this particular DAW. There's tons of support, but if you are just starting out, you might find that Reaper is fairly intimidating, and that might be something that turns you off to this particular program. Now, while I love the spectral editing display within this program, I did find that using the spectral edit points was a little confusing. There's tons of knobs within the spectral edit points, and honestly, it was a little difficult for me to kind of isolate my sound with that many options. Again, if I'd spent more time learning this program and really diving into the tutorials, I probably would have been fine. It's something that goes back to the fact that this program can do a lot and has a ton of features, but it just takes some time to learn. Now, a one-time purchase price of $60 might be a bit hard to stomach, especially when you are spending money on gear and hosting. That's where subscription services might be more manageable on a monthly basis. So let's take a look at our first subscription service with our number 2 pick. Hindenburg Pro takes our number 2 spot as its monthly subscription cost is a mere $12. Now, full disclosure, There is a light version of Hindenburg Pro that is available for a one-time purchase price of $99, but since we're going to be looking at the Pro version, that's what we're going to be focusing on in this review. Now, what are some of the benefits of using Hindenburg Pro? Well, at a mere $12 per month, or again, the $99 light version, it is a fairly low cost for entry. The biggest benefit that Hindenburg Pro has going for it is a very simple interface to get used to. The tools are simplified and they are geared specifically for podcasters and journalists. One of the features I love in Hindenburg Pro is the fact that you can connect your Libsyn profile directly to the program, which means you can actually export your podcast and connect directly to Libsyn. In terms of audio processing, I love their voice profiler. The voice profiler allows you to make quick work of processing your audio, as it can analyze your audio file and identify processes to really enhance it based on the actual voice. And of course, there's tons of support online through YouTube and Hindenburg's Facebook group. So what are some of the negatives of using Hindenburg Pro? Well, for me, one of the biggest ones was the fact that although this program is designed for podcasters and journalists, the tools themselves were fairly simple and don't really give you a ton of wiggle room to use them. I'll give you an example. The EQ only gives you 3 bands, low, mid, and high. So if you have a voice that you want to cut specific frequencies out of, you really can't do that with the EQ within Hindenburg Pro. Unlike some of the other programs that we looked at already, Hindenburg Pro lacks spectral editing, which again, if you're not doing a whole lot of that, it's not a big deal. But keep in mind that every location you're going to be recording your podcast in may have those errant sounds that you might want to isolate and pull out. And without spectral editing at the ready, it's going to be kind of difficult to cut those sounds out. The noise reduction effect is fairly good, but unlike traditional noise reduction effects, there's no way to actually give the plugin a sound sample that you want to compare against. It uses an algorithm on its own to really isolate and remove that sound, but again, you're lacking some of those manual controls that I really would have liked to have had. Just like with any piece of gear, we all have our favorites, and before I reveal my number one pick, let us know down in the comments, what is your favorite audio editing application and why? With that said, let's jump to our number one pick. Number one on our list is probably the most expensive option, and that is, of course, Adobe Audition. Coming in at $20.99 per month. Adobe Audition is the flagship DAW of the Adobe Creative Cloud. Now, full disclosure, because I work in video, I already have an Adobe Creative Cloud account. And so Adobe Audition is actually the DAW that I primarily use when I'm producing my podcast. Now, what are some of the benefits of using Adobe Audition? Now, one of the biggest pluses for me is the fact that this program features real-time playback of effects. Unlike Audacity, where those effects had to be processed within the CPU, you can very easily tweak and adjust different effects and listen to them in real time. Audition features a solid built-in noise reduction effect and also has an adaptive noise reduction effect, which is similar to Hindenburg Pro as it uses an algorithm to adjust the noise reduction level. Like some of the other apps we've looked at, it also features spectral editing, which I gotta say, the spot healing brush was one of the easiest tools to use when trying to remove different noises within the audio file. For me, Audition strikes a nice balance in that it provides the simplicity of use that Hindenburg Pro provides, as well as the pro processes that Reaper provides. You're not going to go wrong with using Audition, in my opinion. Now, it's not all roses with Adobe Audition, so let's take a look at some of the negatives with this program. Now, despite it being fairly simple to use, it is somewhat complicated, especially when compared to the simplicity of Hindenburg Pro. There are a lot of bells and whistles, just like you might find in other programs, but for me, it's not as difficult as it might be when trying to use something like Reaper. Another issue is that certain things like noise reduction, spectral editing, they actually only work within the waveform view, the destructive side. As its name implies, destructive means that these are going to affect that original audio file. So if you're not okay with that, you might find that as an issue. The parametric EQ is limited to only 5 bands. Now that is something that is really interesting compared to the fact that a much cheaper program like Reaper has an unlimited number of bands. Now for me, I found a way around it as I stack my EQs within the effects rack, but ultimately for a much more expensive program done by a company that's as big as Adobe is, it's kind of weird that they only cap you at about 5 bands in their EQ. And the final issue is really price. At $20.99 per month, this is a very expensive DAW, especially when you consider that there are other options out there that are fairly cheap on a monthly subscription. Now, if you're doing any other types of media, if you're doing film, if you're doing photography, if you're doing graphics work, you may already have an Adobe Creative Cloud account already. And in that case, you've pretty much already got Audition right at the ready. So it makes sense to use this DAW if you're already paying for a full Adobe Creative Cloud account. And there you have it. Those are my top picks for editing applications that will really polish your podcast. No matter what editing application you end up choosing, just know that the most important thing is that your podcast delivers your voice and content to your audience. And that software like these can really help. If you want to get started with any of these DAWs, check the links in the description below, and be sure to check out our full overview of everything you need to get started podcasting for under $100 in the link above right over there. And until next time, keep podcasting.